Time to roll.
Do I have stop test?
No, just hit open to public. All right.
You're on air.
Cool. All right. Let's just make sure I get Instagram ready. A little bit of a delay. Oh, big delay. It's all good.
You're gone.
Awesome. All right.
Hey.
Just get organized here. Nope. Wrong one. Cool. All right. We've got a couple of viewers.
Sweet. Hello.
Hello. So hello and welcome to episode 2 of the OVAP Adventure Cast. Yeah, we're gonna talk about some ski equipment today. Kind of deep dive into skis specifically, a little bit of different types of skis, some of the different features that you'll find in different types of skis. So side cut, length, the waist width, how those will affect the performance and the style of skiing you want to do. We'll touch on a little bit about the ski boots and bindings and the entire system and how that goes. Comes together to be your equipment package. And then, yeah, we'll dive into a little bit of caring for skis and how you should be maintaining them as you use them throughout the lifespan of them. So I've got Kyle here with me.
Hello.
And yeah, we're gonna dive into a couple things. A little announcements beforehand. So tomorrow, which is Thursday, what's tomorrow? The 20th?
Yeah, tomorrow's February 20th.
February 20th. We're gonna be at Pakenham Ski Hill for their Women's Day or Ladies' Day, and we're gonna be with Head Skis doing a demo day. So if you're out there and want to come hang out on the hill, stop by and say hi, try out some skis.
Or if you're just not out there but in the market for some skis and want to test some, come on by Mount Pakenham for the demo.
Yeah, and you don't have to be a lady to try the skis. You can
Yeah, no.
yeah, you can come out for anyone. So awesome. Cool. We've got some viewers on Instagram, which is awesome.
Sweet.
Cool. Let's dive into some stuff. What else do we have going on?
We got stickers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If you guys want to come by, you like stickers.
Oh, yeah, you're gonna have to raise those up.
Oh,
so
I
can
will.
see 'em.
One at a time.
Oh.
But yeah, if you are a sticker lover like I am, or you got kids that love stickers, or you know someone who loves stickers, we got some new stickers. Just came in.
That one's
Yes, I ski like a girl. Try to keep up. We've got the Snowvat Pooch. We've got the Snowvat logo.
yeah, some mountains and trees.
And then my personal favorite, probably Scott's too. I love big dumps, Snowvap style.
Which is great. They came in just in time for the big dumps of snow that we received this past week.
Yeah, over those few days, I don't know if anyone's had a chance to get out skiing or snowboarding since, but conditions are nice.
Yeah, they're I think Pakenham said 115 centimeters on their base.
On base, yeah.
Yeah, so the hills are in great shape and a great season for it so far. Oh yeah, and one other thing. So we've got we just launched call it a new product. It's a new tour, which is we've got some hikes coming up. So we had our first winter hike this past weekend, which was a huge success. Thanks to you who came out and enjoyed it. Sandy's been working on those pretty hard. And so a little bit about our winter hikes. They're a winter hike / snowshoe. So depending on the conditions, a lot of the trails, at least some of the tighter trails where they're a little bit more covered, you don't necessarily need snowshoes. So we'll use some crampons or micro spikes or the right footwear for whatever you need for the current conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we've got 2 other hikes coming up. One, we're launching a 60 plus or seniors hike, which is happening this weekend. And then on March break, we are doing a kids and adults or family hike, so to speak. So
That could be a fun one.
yeah, come check them out. They should be on the website. And if you, I believe there's an events page. If you can't find them, just search for hike and they'll be there. Cool. So let's dive into our regular scheduled programming.
Oh,
Um,
that sounds so much more fun.
so we're gonna go through how to select a pair of skis for yourself, and there's gonna be a handful of things that come into play whenever you're looking at skis. Uh, we're gonna we're going to adjust the content a little bit for a more beginner skier, assuming that you don't do a ton of skiing, just to explain the core concepts, but it goes across the board for everybody. So the first thing we're going to talk about is length. Kyle, do you want to touch on ski length and how that impacts kind of how the skis will perform on snow?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. So, first of all, for anyone who might be just getting back into skiing, I promise you, your skis are shorter than they were 20 years ago. It's just the technology and the way it's changed. When the way you're sizing a ski now is different than it once was. But for the core concepts, what you're looking at in terms of how the ski will perform for you is a shorter ski will give you a little bit more maneuverability. It'll be a little bit more of an agile ski, whereas a longer ski will give you more stability at high speeds and track a little bit nicer when you're actually traveling fast on the hill. So,
Yeah, and so whenever you're sizing a ski to somebody, where do you generally start with?
so usually you can start like in terms of where, like how tall.
Where on them?
So you really generally we want to start somewhere between the nose and the chin for like where to kind of get a kickoff point. If you've never skied before, that's a great spot to start as well. Or you can option at that point as a never skied before to go a little bit shorter. But that's like the sweet spot in terms of finding the perfect balance between maneuverability and stability, especially as a beginner skier.
Yeah, and there is no hard and fast rule for where your ski should land on you. You'll find sometimes when you have more experienced skiers who like to go a little bit faster, they also like a little bit wider, like giant slalom type of turns. They're going to go with a longer ski and they'll size up so that they're getting the experience they want out of their ski. And as they ski faster and faster, they'll also move up into like a higher performance ski, but then also generally longer.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And it definitely comes down a lot to preference. The more that you ski and figure out what your style is, how you like to ski, that'll really decide a lot for you in terms of how you're going to size your ski as well.
yeah, and the other thing you're going to look at is if you're playing a little bit more off piste and in deeper snow, a longer ski is going to give you a little bit more flotation. So
Yeah.
going to allow for a bit more float and a bit more ski.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the four types or general types of skis.
Okay.
So generally speaking, you're going to have different shapes, and you'll see this if you look at a ski wall, you'll notice they all kind of have that parabolic shape, like an hourglass figure, but they'll have different ratios throughout the ski and different tip shapes and whatnot. So what those are for is we'll start with the first one, and probably the most common around here is going to be your carving ski.
Yeah.
So most of the time, especially in the eastern part of the country and
Yeah.
around, especially like locally, like Pakenham, Calabogie, Camp Fortune, those types of hills.
Yeah.
Most people are skiing on piste or on groomed trails and on groomed runs, and they're going to be wanting to carve rather than going off I guess you can play in the trees a little bit, but most of the stuff around here is carved.
It's pretty tight.
Or groomed.
If you're in the you're on groom for the most part, and if you're in the trees, you're in pretty tight glades. It's not about being float. It's more about control and challenge. So yeah, you spend most of your time definitely on hard packed or groomed.
Yeah. And then the other kind of three you'll find is an all mountain ski, which is going to be a little bit fatter generally. It'll have a little bit earlier rocker, which we'll go into and show you some skis here in a second. And a little bit generally wider radius. And then there's going to be your free ride skis or sometimes your park skis. So they'll be a little bit fatter underfoot, a little bit more float. You'll see a lot more of that out west in those bigger mountains, that big powder. And then you've got race skis, which are their own beast. They're heavy, lots of metal. They're a little bit of work to ski.
They're stiff. They don't look stiff when you're watching the Olympics, but that's because those people are doing like 130, 140, and they're flapping in the wind. But no, they're heavy. They're steel. They're definitely a whole nother thing.
So let's dive into a couple different skis.
I can grab them.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's not making me look old. Where do we want to start?
Let's start with the super shapes, or not super shapes, super joys. Cool. You know what? Let's stand up for this. I'll show.
I should have got a step stool.
So you'll see in here, you'll see a bigger shovel in the top of the ski, and then it narrows out through to a fairly thin underfoot. This is a 75 millimeter underfoot or waist, and then a little bit wider again down on the back.
That's that parabolic shape.
Yeah. So this is your pretty typical carving ski shape. This will have, let me just check what the radius is. So this is a 13 radius, so it's still fairly tight.
It is tight, but you'll mostly see anywhere between 12 and probably 12 and 15 in an entry level slalom ski, which fits right into a standard carving ski for most mountains around here.
Yeah, and like it's a 158 size. So generally speaking, as you size up and get longer skis, the radius extends out as well.
It does, yeah.
Right? So if you actually want to grab the M cross there, and we'll put it beside just as a comparison. Okay.
The Dynastar.
Yeah, so the M Cross, you'll see it's a little bit wider underfoot. So that one is an 82 millimeter underfoot. So right there. The side cut to it isn't nearly as aggressive. And you'll notice here a little bit more of a flattened out tip to it. Again, nice wide shovel, still the parabolic shape. But significantly different in terms of the actual shape of the ski. The other thing I'd like to point out is if we bring these skis together, you'll see here that the head ski, the carving ski, the rocker starts way up here. So it's a flat ski right up until about that point, and then it takes off. Whereas on the all mountain ski, the rocker starts way back here. So significantly earlier, this is going to give you a little bit more. I've always liked this analogy where your carving ski is going to be more like driving a sports car on the hill, whereas your all mountain ski is going to be a little bit more like driving an SUV. It's going to plow through some of the crud that gets built up on those runs kind of mid-afternoon or later in the day. It's also going to have a little bit more flotation, so you can play around in the powder or off on the sides of the runs, that type of thing. Cool. Let's.
What you'd like to look at?
Let's bring that back, and we'll bring out the Nomad.
All right.
Awesome. So a little bit more in the free ride, or this one specifically park, but very similar shape to what you'll find in a free ride ski. So again, super fat up on the shovel, fairly wide underfoot. So the waist is 95 on this. Again, widens out at the back. Now this one being a park ski, it is a twin tip. And
like most park skis, you'll also notice this one is slightly less parabolic. You don't tend to do a lot of really tight turns in the park because it's very feature oriented and you're spending a lot of your time going in a straight line or close to. So you generally don't end up with a whole lot of side cut out of a park ski either. So you're not looking for a tight turning radius in this situation.
So I figured I'd go grab another Icelandic ski, a little bit more of a traditional free ride style. So again, not a ton of that parabolic shape, maybe a little bit more. The biggest difference here is you'll see the nose is a little bit pointier. The rocker is pretty similar to the same.
But you do get a little bit more of the float spoon shape with an all mountain than you do out of a twin tip.
Yeah,
This is like kind of halfway in between a carving ski and a all mountain ski.
Yeah, like a free ride ski.
Yeah.
You also notice this one here doesn't have the twin tip on the back like that one does. So again, kind of your park ski versus your free ride big bounce ski.
Don't only think of twin tip skis as park skis. If you have small children that you plan on teaching to ski, twin tip skis are actually something I would recommend for when you're skiing backwards with them and working on their snowplow and stuff like that.
That's actually great advice. It was, I believe, this set that I wore whenever Lana was starting to learn snowboarding, and like super, super helpful to be able to ski backwards and not have to worry about catching your back edge. So yeah, cool. I'll put those guys away and I'll grab one more. Next up to racing.
Racing. All right, now we're getting into the tank mode. So
now, one of the things about racing skis is we actually don't have any in store. It's not something we focused on this year. We didn't want to overload. And like, these are very racing, as you would assume, especially competitive race, is very specific in terms of the skis they're looking for.
yeah.
So obviously you can't feel this, but this ski is heavy. A lot of these skis will have multiple layers of metal in them. They're designed to go at fast speeds. If you try to ski this at slow speeds, it's probably not going to be a lot of fun.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. You'll notice like often squared off, very little camber on the back, or not camber, rocker on the back. Fairly flat, generally fairly parabolic. This is an older set, so it's actually an older, not indemnified set anymore. But I just wanted to show it as because it is an important portion of the ski market.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's a good example, although it's not the modern one that you would see in a shop if we went into it, or something that you would order.
Awesome. All right. The last thing I wanted to touch on with skis was the turning radius. So if you're shopping for a set of skis, you'll often see an R with a number, which is the radius. Basically what that is, when the ski is put on edge and loaded to its designed weight and force, that is how many meters the radius of the circle is going to be that it wants to turn at. So the great thing about the parabolic skis is you put them on edge and load them up and they will turn for you.
Yeah.
You don't really have to force anything. So they're super fun to ski. But as you progress through your skill level and you get to a point where you know what type of skiing you do, or you have multiple skis for multiple days and how you want to ski that day, then radius becomes significantly more important.
It absolutely does. Especially getting into the more competitive side of things. If you're into ski racing and that sort of thing, then it definitely becomes more important. The average radius on a giant slalom ski, for example, is about 20 meters. The average radius on a slalom ski is 12, 13 meters.
Yeah.
Which is considered a tight radius. And then if you get into super G racing, it goes even further than that in the other direction, back to 40 meters.
Yeah.
So that really depends on your ski style, how sharp you want to be turning, what type of runs you spend most of your time on, things like that.
Yeah. So that's everything we had planned for today on skis. Let's shift a little bit to boots. Do you want to
We
grab
can do that. Yeah.
those guys? Now, I want to preface this with we're not going to do a deep dive on boots today. They are their own beast, and we have we'll do an entire episode on boots.
We will.
I may actually just bring this down a little bit so that we can see those a bit better, but we'll put them up. So, couple things whenever you're talking about boots and you're going to get a boot fitting. So, number one, I do not recommend buying a set of boots online.
No.
It's one of the items that like the fit really, really matters. And there's a lot that goes into the fit. So one of the things that you'll start off with is flex. So each of these boots will have a certain amount of pressure that like flexes the boot to its full extent. Now, the interesting thing about flex is it's not a universal measurement. It's not anything very scientific. Will like the same line of boots, a 90 flex boot will flex easier than a 110 flex boot, but there's no actual proper measurement.
It's not an industry standard.
It's not even a standard within a single brand.
Yeah.
Like if you move from one product, say like the Head Edge series to the Head Formula series, the 90 boot in the Formula or the 110 boot in the Formula will not flex the same as the 110 boot in the Edge.
No.
Right? So there's a lot that goes into it. It's really important that I find some people get a little caught up on like the flex. My flex is this. You can kind of throw that out the window. It's important to make sure that you can flex the boot in store, because if you can't flex it in store, being able to do it on the mountain whenever it's cold is very unlikely. And you want your boot to do part of the work for you and act properly on the hill. The next thing is
to get it to do that, there's more things that come into play.
Well, that's it. And a lot of it really comes down to, well, your skill level is going to be one of them, right?
Yes.
Like a more advanced skier is going to require a stiffer flex boot, generally speaking. Also, like a heavier human is going to require a stiffer flex boot. So even if you're a beginner female that is a small frame, you probably don't want to be in a 110 flex boot.
No.
It's just not going to make sense.
Yeah.
So fitting to the flex is super important. Also fitting to the boot itself. So one of the interesting things is like ski boots aren't designed to fit feet.
No.
As weird as that sounds.
They're designed to fit skis.
Well, yeah. And like if you had 100 people in a row, and everyone, as weird as it could be, takes off their socks and you look at every single set of feet, you're going to have 100 different sets of feet. Like there's so much that can be different in somebody's foot. And so you really need to make sure that it fits as well as possible. And then you get a boot fitting and have it properly fitted to you, and the work's done to the boot so that it's good for you. One of the biggest mistakes that most people do is they often fit their boot to the widest part of the foot, which is often up at the front. But the part that's important for your performance is that your heel is properly into the heel pocket. And so you end up with a boot that ends up being too big for your foot.
Well, yeah, because especially the boot, once you get into the boot and you start skiing it, and it's not like you're just walking simply down the street. You're going to be working your weight back and forth and shifting back and forth. And that additional play that's going on with your foot over time packs the boot out and changes how it fits and makes it fit looser. And once it starts to fit that little bit looser, you start to lose responsiveness and control over what your boot and foot is actually doing to like get the ski to follow your orders.
Yeah, and whenever you're skiing, little tiny adjustments in the way that the ski hits the snow makes a huge difference in the performance of the ski, what you're wanting to do on the hill. And so if you think of it where you have like a ball and a cup, if there's room in that cup to move without, or even like that, if there's room for your foot to move back and forth without making the ski go, you're wasting energy, you're expending energy that is unnecessary. You're losing responsiveness. And as you, again, progress in your skill level, that becomes more and more important. Yeah, and so liners will pack out, and yeah, your foot shape really matters. Really, again, can't stress that enough. Go to your local shop, whether it's us or it's somewhere else.
Yeah.
And get a boot fitting. Make sure that it fits your boot or your foot properly.
And that's another big part of the reason to not buy them online is because different boots have different volumes to them as well.
Right.
And depending on the volume of your foot, you want to make sure that you're getting a boot that can be fit properly to you. Because even though it may come across as the right size, if it's not a proper fit in terms of the volume and things like that, then no amount of alteration or fitting or specialty fitting is going to make that boot fit you in its most ideal way.
Yeah. So yeah, that's quick little segment on boots.
Boots 101.
Yeah.
You'll have to tune in next time for Boots 102.
Exactly. We'll do a deep dive so that you make sure you've got as much info as you can get on boots. So next up is kind of the last part of the ski setup that's on your feet, and it's the bindings.
Yeah.
It's where the boot meets the ski, if you will.
Yeah.
So with bindings, one of the cool things about a lot of skis now is a lot of skis come as what they call system skis. So they're actually a ski and binding package.
Yeah.
There's some really cool stuff coming out where the binding system is actually built right into the ski on some of them. And so it simplifies the binding purchase process a little bit, unless you are up in that like more advanced, like you really care about which bindings you're using.
Yeah.
Your skis are probably going to come with some, which is awesome. That doesn't mean that you can just buy them online, pop the bindings on, and put a boot in them, right?
No.
Yeah.
Very rare that works out. Sorry for the blunt honesty, but yeah.
The reality is you almost have to think of bindings as the safety feature that's built into your skis and your boots. The most common injury that occurs in skiing, and likely one of, I won't say the worst, but yeah, the most common.
Yeah,
is,
and it sounds terrible that we're talking about it, but it's a thing.
Yeah, it's an ACL or MCL tear, and so that's when the ski twists, the binding doesn't release, but your knee does instead.
That injury is usually accompanied by a dislocation in the knee as well. Very uncomfortable.
Now, I mean, that doesn't mean that skiing is dangerous.
No,
it's still a sport.
What it means is, in any sport or activity, like otherwise, there's always a risk factor. And the importance of what we're telling you isn't about the injury or the danger. It's about the safety features that have been put in place by bindings to help limit that risk and avoid those injuries at almost all costs.
Yeah, and so if talking about bindings, what are some of those safety features that are built in or?
So the ones that we see in every single binding now, and the common thing that is a standard across all industry, would be your DIN settings. So what the DIN setting refers to is how tight the springs inside the bindings are actually going to be, pressing the pressure to hold the boot in. So years ago, injuries were actually much more common in the sport because they didn't have any technology in the binding system to allow for an easy release. Nowadays, there's wing systems on the toe piece that allow your boot, when pressured to the side, to open the wings. And those wings, how easily they open or release the boot, is greatly determined by the pressure on the spring. I'm actually going to run and grab a ski so we can show the wings and stuff on the binder.
Yeah. And so DIN, there is it's an acronym for, I don't remember what, it's a German acronym.
We're gonna have to Google that one. I can't remember.
I can't either.
We're gonna have to Google that one because I can't remember the acronym right now.
Does Here it is. No, that's not it. That's it's a drug identification number, not that.
No. So while he's finding out that, I'm just going to show you what I was talking about, the wings on the front. So this is the couple system, the wing coupler system, where the toe of the boot essentially goes in and clicks. Most of you probably know that from skiing, and I'm telling you way more than I need to. But this is the wing system. So as you can see, that flex in it. So what that allows is for that to turn and release your boot in a twisting situation. That is adjusted both front and back so that the pressure is correct. And when adjusted correctly, in the event of a fall, your ski will come off your foot, giving less leverage for a twisting injury.
Yeah, and that's this. It's similar on the back with the heel release, right?
It is similar on the back with the heel release. So the heel is set up with a concave station point and a minimal grab. So while the forward pressure, the spring in the back is adjusted correctly, and the din in the back is adjusted correctly, while that pressure is in the ski and you're using it in the standard motion, it will be enough pressure to hold. But because of the shape and the minimal edge on the backside, once the toe shifts, it changes the dynamic of how it fits into the back and allows it to slip out of the coupling and remove you from the ski as well. There are some models that twist or pivot in the back as well to add an extra layer of safety.
Yeah.
But they're less common now because of the amount of technology that goes into the system.
So we've talked mostly about why it's important for it to have the dins not too high, because if the din is too high, the ski won't release, right? And you risk an injury in your knee. What happens if the din's too low?
Well, you ever tried to drive a car in the wintertime without winter tires?
Yes.
You don't really get anywhere.
No.
It's the same for skiing when your din's too low because your skis fall off all the time and you spend your entire day putting them back on and trying to get going.
Yeah. So because of that, the pressure, and it's a function of how tall you are, how heavy you are, what type of skier you are. It's a calculation that we do whenever
your size of foot, the size of your foot, comes into play.
And so yeah, it's the amount of pressure that's required. If you don't have enough pressure there, your skis pop off without you doing much. And that's no fun for anyone either.
No, it's not.
There's one other important thing about bindings that we should mention, and that is indemnification.
Ah, yes.
So every year we get a list from the manufacturers of bindings that are indemnified. And basically, what that means is we are covered by insurance to adjust them,
maintain
them. And so if your binding is not on that list, and ski bindings normally stay on there for about 10 years, give or take a couple.
Depending. Some models you'll see stay on the list for a little over that, like 10 to 15. Some models are a little less. It really depends a lot on the type of binding it is and
the design features.
The design features and things like that.
Yeah, and so basically what it means is if it's no longer indemnified, a reputable shop will not touch the bindings or will not adjust them, simply because we're no longer covered by insurance for it. Yeah. If we were to adjust them and you were to go skiing and get injured, we take on risk and potentially risk a lawsuit.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that if it was you that you would sue us, but an insurance company might. We just don't take those risks.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. So anything else on indemnifications that we should touch on?
Well, just to say that there's no guaranteed timeline that a binding becomes fit or unfit. There's a standard guideline that they go by and manufacturers go by based on the regular use of the equipment. But I will say that if you're a skier who skis 100 days a year, your skis are going to wear out and your bindings are going to wear out sooner than someone who skis 10 times. Right. So they base it on the average. If you're a very avid skier, every time you twist, turn, do any kind of mobility in your ski with your boot and your ski, you are working those springs. And like any other spring system, they do wear out over time. So it's not always a guaranteed to say one way or the other, but it is best to keep an eye on them, keep track of how much you ski, that sort of thing, and always get that checked out, because if you do need something adjusted and a shop can't do it, it's a fairly complicated system to figure out the best way to go about doing it yourself, and we also can't recommend that.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, it keeping track of how long or how much may give you the best idea of when it's time to upgrade or to purchase a new binding and things like that.
I've got another common question that we get in store, and
Yeah.
that's it often happens whenever we identify a binding that's no longer indemnified. Can I still ski with them?
Yes.
Yeah, technically you can. As,
Yeah.
as long as you understand that like you are taking on that risk of if it potentially doesn't release or releases too often, like that's a decision you're making, and we just want to make
Yeah.
sure that people are educated.
Yeah, absolutely. I seen bindings that were not non-indemnified still being used? Yes. Have I seen bindings indemnified that have come apart in a crazy park incident or something? Yes. So it's really not a guaranteed thing. You can still use a binding, but you won't, like Scott said, find a reputable shop that really wants to adjust that or that will adjust that for you.
Yeah. And so as we're talking about bindings and the indemnification and them being good or not and wearing out, it kind of lends to kind of the next thing we'll talk about, and that's ski maintenance.
Okay.
And like any other piece of equipment, they need to be maintained. The biggest thing, or I guess the most common thing that people will talk about is their skis being waxed or sharpened.
Yeah.
So, just a couple quick questions on that we often get is, how often should I be waxing my skis?
All right. Well, from a tech standpoint, and I like to stay on top of my maintenance and make sure that my equipment's performing the best that it can perform on a regular basis. And I would say my recommendation is every 8 to 10 days of skiing. Let's keep in mind though, that recommendation has a bit of an open-endedness on both sides, because when I go skiing for a day, I ski for anywhere from 8 to 12 hours, somewhere in that line. I have friends who ski for a day, and that means 2.5 hours on the slopes, an hour in the lunchroom, and 2 hours at the bar. So you really got to figure out how much time you're spending on your skis themselves. But a full day of skiing, 8 to 10 days for sure.
Yeah, and there's going to be a couple of things that you'll notice whenever your skis start to need a tune. And so the first one and the most obvious one, if you're in tune with your skis and you're skiing lots, is you're just not skiing the same speed.
No,
They're not sliding on
they're
snow.
slow. Little kids are passing you freely on the flat sections.
Yeah. And I've even had that if I'm skiing with a friend and I'm on a set of skis that hasn't been waxed super recently, you're skiing along and like you might be well ahead of them and coming down to the bottom at speed, and then you're just kind of gliding over to the chairlift, and then your buddy goes right past you, and you're like, okay, yeah, my skis need to be waxed.
Yeah.
One of the other kind of visual cues that you can get from the skis is the base starts to turn like almost a grayish.
It
whitish
does.
color.
Yeah, it starts to get a bit dehydrated. And as it starts to dry out and get dehydrated, it starts to turn from whatever pure shade it has to having almost a gray or dry sheen on it.
Now this one here, a little bit of that is wax that's kind of pulled up, but you'll see like that grayish in that center.
That would be an extreme case, but it does usually, you'll notice it at first along the edges, because you spend more time on the edge of your ski turning back and forth than what you do directly on the flat base of your ski. So the wear and tear does hit the edges sooner. Yeah, so then that is number two for how you can identify. But obviously, again, it's going to come down to a lot of like how you're sliding on snow and that. And what type of snow like the type of snow that you're on as well. Icier conditions will definitely wear out your wax faster than softer conditions will.
Yeah. What about for sharpening? How do you tell if your skis need a sharpen?
They don't want to turn. No, but you will notice as you're skiing, if you're very in tune with your skis, you'll start to notice tiny flecks or that the ski wants to track side to side a little bit. Um, the more obvious ones as they're getting dull, if you hit a slightly harder or an icier section, you'll find they want to skirt sideways and slide sideways instead of cutting in and actually hanging onto that edge turn. So little things like that. And then there's the trusty old, if you think they're dull, they probably are.
Yeah. The other one, if you haven't skied your skis in a while, you'll see some rust on them likely, and you generally need to sharpen those up, get the rust off, make sure it has a nice fine edge to dig in.
Absolutely, because that being said too, that will also affect your speed and your turning and things like that. Because as the edges get any kind of rust buildup or any kind of thing like that on them, they start to grab and hang on to snow, and snow will actually get clumped into the pores and then start to freeze on it. So you'll end up with clumping along the edge, and that just becomes more resistance, and everything starts to slow down from there as well. So even if your skis don't need a wax, but they're slow, it could just be rust on the edges or something.
Yeah. Which kind of transitions into how do you kind of prevent rust, and what are the things that you can do at the end of your ski day to make sure that your skis are good and ready to go for the next one?
Well, I'm not sure what you do, but one thing that I do for sure is I always dry my equipment off. I keep shop rags. I dry my equipment off before I put it in the car. I dry it off when I get home, and I store it in a dry area because moisture and condensation, or even as snow and ice melts off of the board, it ends up sitting on the edges and it will rust fairly quickly.
Yeah, I've even found like a new set of skis on day one after snow. Uh, if I'm not diligent and I don't wipe that off, you can often find, like a lot of people do, they just clip the bindings together, throw them in the garage. It melts and then freezes again, and melts and freezes again. You see, even down near the bottom, near the tail of the ski, you'll find buildup of rust just from the water sitting on them.
Yeah.
I often think about, a lot of people also have skates, and it is common practice when you're done skating, you take your skates off, you wipe them down with a rag, and make sure that you don't have any sitting water on them because the rust builds up. It's the same concept with skis; they're just a little bit bigger,
Yeah.
or a lot bigger.
But yeah.
Cool. So that's I think we've pretty much got everything we wanted to cover done for today.
I think so.
Megan, do we have any questions from the audience or anything in there that
Nikki knows what DIN is.
Nikki knows what DIN is?
Deutsches Institut für Normung.
Deutsches Institut für Normung.
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 Definitely not pronouncing it right, but like.
No, yeah, we butchered that, and
Yeah.
I believe it is a German group of words.
I think so.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah.
It's essentially, I guess, the German version of like standardization.
Okay. Well then,
like our ISO.
sure. Yeah.
Nikki says it's German.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good to know. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you. Any other? I'll just check Instagram. It looks like we're good. Anything else in there?
Brandon on Facebook wants to know if he can get a 24 sticker for his racing speed.
A which sticker?
It says 24.
24 sticker. Oh, Brandon. I know who Brandon is. No, I can't get you a William Byron sticker for your racing ski, Brandon. I know, yes, he won the Daytona 500. Thank you. But hey, at least you'll know it goes fast.
It goes fast and it turns left.
Or it just avoids crashes.
Yeah.
But Awesome. Any other ones?
That's all I got.
Cool. Well, then I think that is all we've got for today.
Strap.
Oh, right.
Oh my God.
We
Behind the
forgot-
scenes reminders coming in hot.
Oh, on the comment of caring for skis, actually, I'll leave that with you and I'll grab a set of skis.
All right.
Those are awesome.
This is a ski strap. Or depending which old school person you talk to and from where, they may call it a ski bully. I'm not sure why.
So these are awesome. Most people bring their skis in just like this with nothing on them. The skis, I'll try to do this without scraping them, but they end up sliding and not falling apart either in transit if you have them in your Thule or whatever. These are great. You just pop them in between here. You keep the bases apart at the point of contact. Oh. And then wrap them around. So that way they actually hold together nicely. I can shake these around, even hang them sideways, and they're not going to fall apart. Megan, what's the price on these?
$9.
$9. So like your $10 and the amount of headache it saves is awesome.
Yeah, and not only headache, but something else that as a tech I can credit these with is the fact you'll often notice if any of you have skis at home or you're near your skis right now, or maybe you're even on your skis right now on the chairlift, just checking things out on your phone. But take a look in this section of the ski where the two contact points are when they're pressed together, and you'll often see a side to side scratch pattern. And it tends to wear itself out over time more and more. So I think Scott's going to try and find an example of it. But with the rubber pad in between the two, these also help prevent that slide and the side to side damage that occurs on bases. It doesn't seem like a lot because it's fairly thin scratches usually, but as they build up more and more, it creates a really heavy friction point, and you end up getting a little bit of back drag and a little bit of snow buildup on those sections. So on a day when the snow might be a little bit sticky, or a really common time that you'll see it is on a day that starts off really cold, warms up, and then starts to snow. So you have a really cold base with some fluffy new snow on top of it. That snow will start to stick really quickly to the areas that have that bit of a bite to it. Similar to cross hatching for anyone who does ceramics or pottery.
Yeah, unfortunately, most of the skis that we have in here have been serviced, and so you don't see them anymore. But
Fair enough,
that's a
but-
good example.
Either way, take a look at the bottom of yours. If you don't have ski straps, you do have the side to side scratches.
Yeah, yeah, one of the best like $10 investments that you can make in protecting your skis.
Yeah, and
So
my understanding of these as well, if not for this year, for next year, is that Santa's elves have gotten the hang of making these very well. So you can throw them on the list, and you may find one in your stocking.
you might even be able to find a SnowVap one.
Maybe so. We'll see if the elves get the graphics in time.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, that's it for us. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you all for hanging out with us and listening to us ramble for
Yeah.
the last 45, 50 minutes.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you haven't, if you're planning on skiing tomorrow, come out and see us at Pakenham. We'll both be there
Absolutely.
with the head ski team, and yeah.
Come out and have a chat. If you think of any questions that you couldn't think of during the show, you can ask us then as well in person. I think
that actually reminds me. If you have any other questions, or if you're watching this later and you have questions that you want us to answer, send us an email. You can send them to hello@ovap.ca. That'll help us figure out what to talk about on our next show, and we'll answer anything you've got as well through email.
Yeah.
But or feel free